All right, I've got the calendar pulled up here because I just want to review with you what we've talked about so far and make sure everybody knows what's coming up. This calendar's been up for a couple weeks now. So last week, when we came back from the 3-day weekend, we had tested the week before on up to 1.6. Unit 1, we split into 2 tests. So we're almost done with the second part of Unit 1. We did 1.7, 8, and 9 last week. And then yesterday we did 1.10. Today we're going to do 1.11. And then we're going to have a couple days to just review and practice all of those topics. Okay. So our test is this week on Friday. Just want to be clear, make sure everybody had seen that. Sorry, I have the hiccups all of a sudden. Make sure everybody had seen that in the calendar. So for 111, I need y'all, I see some headphones and earbuds in. I need y'all to take those out, put them away. Hopefully we can get through this lesson with some time left for y'all to practice. Okay, but I need everybody paying attention because some of these, we're dealing with word problems today. So there's a lot of putting together what we've been doing so far, translating from words into math equations and solving and substituting and evaluating. It's all getting put together. Okay, so we've got to get through several of these examples. Hopefully we'll make it a little bit easier on y'all when you're doing the practice. All right, so this is just a guide for steps to solving a word problem, because that's our goal today, is to be able to read, set up, and solve word problems. Okay, this is not necessarily something that all of you are going to do every single step of every single problem. Okay, but it is a good strategy to help break them down. Okay, break the process down. So first we want to make sure that we understand the problem. Okay, to understand the problem, we definitely have to read it carefully. Okay, some word problems are shorter than others. Okay, the lengthier they get, the more carefully we need to read. Okay, so we need to understand the problem. We're going to read it through once. Okay, we need to identify what it is we're looking for. Okay, so I like to underline or circle the actual question. Okay, so underline the question. And then I like to go back and either circle or highlight the important information. Okay, what is it that I already know? What did they tell me? Okay, so I'm going to circle or highlight, or some of you may do more underlining. Okay, so notate somehow. I'm leaving out an L there. Highlight the important info, the things they've already given you that you need to be able to answer the question. Okay, so once we understand the problem, we know what they've told us and what they want us to find. Now it's time to plan a strategy. Okay, so once the process for planning a strategy is we have to sometimes draw a picture. Sometimes that will be making a table. Okay, and a lot of times what we're going to be focusing on, the types of problems that we're going to focus on today, are the translating into equations. That's building off what we talked about yesterday, is translating from the math, from the words into the math equations. Okay, so it's going to bring in what we were doing yesterday. Once we figure out our plan, how is it that we're going to solve this? We're actually going to solve. Okay, so to solve the problem, I've emphasized this all year. We want to show all our work. Remember on our last test, I told y'all, even if you miss something, if you get it wrong, even on the multiple choice, if you have work shown and I can see if you did certain steps correct or where your mistake was made, I can give you partial credit. Okay, maybe it's a point, maybe it's half points, maybe it's all but 1 point. Okay, it depends on how much work you show, how detailed your work is. So we want to show all our work to make sure we're understanding the process. And I can help you when you make mistakes, figure out where that mistake is. So we're going to show all of our work and we're going to label our answers. In a lot of word problems, there are units given. Okay, so we want to make sure we use the proper units. So if it's money or measurements, whatever it is, we want to put the units on there for our word problems. And then last but not least, it's important to check your answers. Okay, you can always go back and check what you got. I would reread the question. Okay, and you should be able to explain or justify the answer you got. Sometimes it will ask you to answer in a sentence. You don't have to if they don't ask you to, but you should be able to say a sentence in your head, even if you're not writing it down, and it should make sense in the context of that problem. Okay, that's that last part. Is your answer reasonable? That means, does it make sense? Sometimes you may have a little typo or something in your calculator and you get some way off number and it just doesn't even make sense for the context. So maybe they're talking about like a phone bill or something and you get a negative number. That does not make sense that you would have a negative value that you owe for a bill, right? Okay, so make sure that whatever you get, you're checking it and making sure that it makes sense in that problem. Okay, so the word problems we're going to look at on the front are a little more generic. There's no units. We're just looking for numbers. They're describing a relationship between numbers, and we're going to figure out what those numbers are. And then on the back, they're going to get a little more complex, and there's going to be units and things like that. Okay, so on the front, for example 1, it says the sum of 2 consecutive integers is 71. Find the numbers. Okay, so I've read the question. I'm going to underline what it is they're asking for, which is to find the numbers. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to circle or highlight the important words or phrases, the information that they've given us. Okay, so we're going to think back to our notes from yesterday and last week on what some of these words and phrases mean. Okay, what did sum mean? Add. Okay, so I know I'm going to be adding. Okay, and it's the sum of 2 consecutive integers. So an integer, if you've forgotten what that word means, an integer is a counting number. Okay, not decimals or fractions. It's numbers we would say when we're counting. They can be positive or negative. Okay, but it's numbers that do not have a fraction or decimal. Okay, now what about that word consecutive? We haven't looked, that hasn't been in our notes yet. Consecutive. Think about those of you who play a sport or watch sports. If your team has 3 consecutive wins, what does that mean? What does consecutive mean? In a row. Good. So I'm going to put above this in a row. Or next to each other. Consecutive means they're back to back. They're right next to each other. So when we say consecutive integers, that means the numbers that come right after each other. Okay, so 1 and 2 are consecutive. 2 and 3 are consecutive. Okay, and then it says is 71. We talked about is. What math symbol does is translate to? Equals. Good. So we're going to have 2 numbers added together and they're going to equal 71. So I'm going to translate that to an equation. I don't know what the numbers are yet, so I'm going to use variables to represent them. So I'm just going to say x plus y equals 71. Now, I can't solve that the way that I wrote it with x and y because it's 2 different variables, 2 different letters. To be able to solve this, I need them to be the same letter. But the fact that they are consecutive, okay, or in a row, that tells me I can replace the y and put it in terms of X, okay? Whatever my first number is, the second number, if they are consecutive or in a row, how many more is it? How much higher is the next number if they're consecutive? What's one more? Okay, so consecutive means that this Y should be one more than X. So I can replace that Y with one more than X. So I make that substitution. I replace Y with X plus 1. Now I only have one variable, X. So now I can solve this, and I'm going to do it by simplifying on the left side. Okay, I look in the parentheses, there's nothing to do. Okay, there's nothing multiplied outside the parentheses, so I can drop them. So X plus 1. Okay, I'm going to combine like terms. X plus X is 2X. Uh-oh, I don't know what just zoomed in big time for me. So 2X plus 1 equals 71. Okay, now we're ready to solve. If it's helpful to you to draw the line down your equation to separate the left and right, do that. And we're going to get the variable, that's the letter X by itself. So I use opposite operation. So I'm going to move the plus 1, the constant, to the other side. The opposite is minus 1. And what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So it eliminates on the left and leaves me with 2X equals 70. Okay, I'm going to come up here since I ran out of room. So I've got 2X equals 70. I still am going to do opposite operation to move the 2 away from the X. The 2 is being multiplied. So what's the opposite of multiply? Okay, so this time we're going to divide the coefficient out. Okay, and then y'all will have your 4-function calculators. You don't have to do this in your head, but it comes out to 35. That is not my final answer. This is what I mean when I say check and go back and read to make sure you're answering what they asked. It said to find the numbers. That's plural. Okay, there should be 2 numbers. Okay, it's 2 numbers that add together. I've got one of them is 35. What did we say the second number would be? Compared to the first number, what did we say over here? It's going to be one more. So we got that X is 35, and we said that Y is X plus 1. So it's going to be 35 plus 1. A lot of you don't have to show this part. You will understand it's one more, so it's going to be 36. So 35 and 36 are consecutive. They're back-to-back numbers, okay? And we can check our answer, okay, by asking ourselves, does 35 plus 36 equal 71? And it does. So we check it, it works. So our answer is 35 and 36. The sum, when I add those together, of those consecutive integers came out to 71. Questions so far? All right, number 2 is very similar. There is one word in there that's different. What is it? Read through that question on number 2. What is one word that's added into that that's different than number 1? Even. Okay, so this is looking for the sum of 2 consecutive even integers. Okay, so it's very similar, but slightly different. Instead of our second number being 1 more than the previous number, how far apart are even numbers? What are even numbers? I heard somebody, 2, 4, 6. That's right. They're numbers that divide by 2 evenly. Okay. So how far apart are 2 and 4, or 4 and 6, or 6 and 8? How many digits are between those? 2. Okay, it's like it's skip counting by 2. 2, 4, 6, 8. So if I want consecutive again, in a row again, so consecutive even integers, that means they're going to be 2 apart. So my 2 numbers, instead of y being 1 more than x, y is going to be 2 more than x. Okay? Because we're still finding the sum, and this time it's 114. Okay, so I'm going to go through, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to combine like terms. So I've got 2x plus 2. I'm going to go through the same process of solving this one. Okay, I'm going to subtract the constant because that's the opposite operation. Bless you. Okay, that leaves me with 2x equals 112. And then I'm going to divide out the coefficient just like I did in number 1. Okay, the opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So this time I'm left with x equals 56. And again, if you need to use your 4-function calculator, you can. Okay, so that's one of my numbers. Again, I'm going to go back and ask, what are they looking for? They want me to find the numbers. There's 2 answers here. 56 is one of them. How do I get y if I know x is 56? We said this time y is 2 more than x. So what's 2 more than x? 58. Okay, now I'm going to double check. I'm going to use our strategy that we wrote down. We're going to check 56 plus 58. Does it equal 114? And you can check that in your calculator if you need to. It does. So it checks out. So my answer is 56 and 58. Those are both even numbers, and they are consecutive even numbers. The next even number after 56 is 58. Okay, so it meets all the criteria from the problem. Okay, and it makes it true. It does add to 114. Okay, so I want y'all to try 3. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute. Walk around and check. I want y'all to try number 3. It's very similar. It's consecutive again. This time it's odd. Okay, however, does it matter if they're consecutive odd or consecutive even? Are they a different distance apart from each other? If I skip count 1, 3, 5, 7, how many apart are those numbers? They're still 2 apart. So we're actually going to set this one up the same way we did number 2. Okay, that second number, we're going to have x be the first number and x plus 2 is the second number, so that they're consecutive odd. Okay, but this time it's set equal to 48 and you need to try solving. So everybody should be trying that. Close this for now, okay? Friends, close your laptop for me. We don't need it right now. Oh, they're right here. If y'all want to grab your 4-function. Oh. You want Victoria? 4-function calculator, if you need them. All right. If you didn't finish, it's okay. Let's see how far you were able to make it. We said that we're looking for the sum again, so we're adding two unknown numbers together, and it says that it is 48, so equals 48. In the middle, again, they tell us they're consecutive odd integers. So we said that this second digit, the second number, would be two more than the first number. So whatever x is, y is two more than x. So I can substitute that in. So when I combine like terms, I have 2x plus 2 equals 48. And then I'm ready to solve by moving terms across the equation. So I'm going to subtract 2 to move my constant. That leaves me with 2x equals 46. And then divide 2 to move the coefficient, which leaves me with x is 23. Again, I'm not done when I get to that because I'm looking for two numbers, plural. So 23 is one of them, but we still have to go back and say, okay, well, we said that y was 2 more than x. Again, a lot of you won't have to write this part down. You can just add 2 in your head and know that the next number after 23, the next odd integer, is 25. Okay, you can come and check your work and say, does 23 plus 25 indeed equal 48? And it does. It checks out. So my answer here is 23 and 25. Those are odd consecutive integers, and they add to 48. They have a sum of 48. Again, that's sum meant to add. Okay. So those few were similar to each other, so we can kind of get the hang of that. We have to interpret what the words are asking and write it into an equation. Now, if you flip over to the back, okay, these are a little more complex word problems. Okay, I'm actually going to start from the bottom because I think number 4 is the hardest of these examples to interpret. So let's start a little simpler with number 6. Okay, so in number 6, Carla has grades of 91 and 82 on her first 2 math tests. What possible score on a third test will give her an average score of 85? Okay, so my strategies that we talked about for word problems is what is it they're actually asking for? And in this case, it's the third test score. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And what do I know to help me answer that? I know that she had a 91 and an 82 on the first 2. And we're looking to see what would make an average of 85. So before I can answer this, I have to know what that word average means. Does anybody remember how to calculate an average? Or a mean? Mean is another word for average. No? So if you're finding the average of anything, you're adding up all the terms, however many there are, you're getting a sum, and then you're dividing by how many there are. So if you don't remember what that word means, we need to write that down. So the average is the sum of the terms. In this case, it's grades, but it can be anything, divided by the number of terms. So how many terms are there? So in this example, we're talking our terms are test grades, okay? And they're telling us that the average that we're trying to figure out what test grade would give her an average of 85. So average, I substitute 85 for that. Okay, and then I'm going to add what her scores currently are, 91, 82, And then we have a third unknown test score. That's what I'm trying to find. That's the missing piece. And so how many test scores are there? Including the one that we're trying to find. How many on top, or how many terms are being added up here? 3. So there are 3 test scores who we want to find the average to be 85. So we're going to be dividing by 3. Okay, so now I've set it up, and now I need to solve. So to solve this for x, again, this is what we're looking for here, is this x. That's what we want to solve. First, we need to get rid of that denominator, okay? So we're going to use opposite operations, okay? So to get rid of divided by 3, what is the opposite of dividing by 3? So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. If it helps you to understand that everything on top is done together, you can put parentheses around that. But remember that fraction bar also serves as a grouping symbol. The top is grouped together, the bottom is grouped together. So we have to get rid of the denominator first. So the 3 eliminates on the right. And so then I've got to do the 85 times 3, and I passed out your calculators to you, so you can use those if you need to. I get 255. And I've got 91 plus 82 plus x. And remember, x is what I'm looking for. This is the missing piece. So I'm going to combine like terms over here on the right side. Okay, that 81 and 91 and 82 can combine to 173. So I've got 173 plus x equals the 255. Okay, and so now I have to move the 173. What is the opposite operation of adding 173? Subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 173. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I do the 255 minus the 173, which leaves me with 82. So 82, and x is the only thing left on the right. So that x represented the missing test score, that third test. So if she makes an 82 on that next test, her test average will be an 85. Okay, so you can just box in 82, or you can write that in a sentence. You can say a test score of 82. Okay. Make sure you wrote down this formula on how to find an average. If you were one of the people who didn't remember how to find an average, you've got to know what the terms mean to be able to answer the questions. All right, let's move up to number 5. This is a bicycle company is manufacturing 800 bicycles a month. Each month after this month, they're going to increase production by 150 bicycles a month until the monthly production reaches 1,700 bicycles. How long will it take the company to reach the production goal? Okay, so they're asking, how long will this take? Okay, so that's what we're going to call X. How long, and look at all of the units. It's all in months, 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 months. Okay, so they're asking how many months. So our X is going to represent months. Right now, they presently, there's 800 per month. And they're going to increase by 150 a month. Ooh, what happened? What did we say yesterday in that little table we made with the terms and which meant add, subtract, multiply, divide? What did increase mean to do? We put that under add. So if we're increasing, we're adding. Okay, so we're going to take the current 800 bikes a month. That's our current production. And we're going to increase, so we're going to add 150 a month, okay? A month means we're multiplying by the number of months. So 150 times X, so 150X. Okay, so increase, told us we were adding. Okay, we presently have 800 a month. Okay, that's the current status quo. And we're increasing it by 150 a month. So that's the 150X. And we're going to do that until we reach the production of 1,700 a month. So that's what we're going to go. When will we equal 1,700? Okay, so we're going to calculate this, work this backward to find out how many months, what is X, how many months is it going to take to get to a production of 1,700? So I have to work this backward. Okay, so what has to move away from the X first? The 150 or the 800? The 800, always the constant, the one without the letter moves first. Okay, so the opposite of 800 is minus 800. So that leaves me with 150X equals 900. And then how am I going to get rid of the 150? Very good. Divide. Okay, and that comes out to 6. And what units did we say X was in? Months. We said how long, okay, how long, how many months? So our answer is 6 months. You can go back and check by plugging 6 into the equation we wrote. If you wanted to do that in your calculator, you could do 150 times 6 and then add the 800, and it does get you back to the 1,700. Okay, so if you plug that 6 in, it checks out, it works. So it would take us 6 months to get to that production rate. All right, last but not least up here is the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, China. The United States won the most medals and China won the second greatest number of medals. The US won 90, less than twice the number of medals won by China. If the difference between the number of medals won by the US and China was 10, determine the number of medals won by the US. Okay, I think this is the most complicated just because of how wordy it is, and they give us some extra information that's not really pertinent. Okay, so we're asked to determine the number of medals won by the US. That's what we want to know. How many medals did the US win? Okay, but we need to come up with our variables. What are our letters going to represent? Okay, so we're going to have the number of medals for the United States and the number of medals for China. So let's call the United States X and China Y. Okay. Now, it says that the US won the most, China won the second most. That doesn't really matter. I can't write an equation with that. Okay. Now here, this next sentence, the US won 90, less than twice the number of medals won by China. Okay. Less than. Where did we put that in our table yesterday? What operation does less than mean to do? Subtract. So 90 less than means we're going to subtract 90, okay, from something. Okay, what are we subtracting it from? We're subtracting it from twice the number of medals of China. Twice, what did we say twice meant? Multiply by 2. Okay, and we said China is represented by Y, so 2Y. So 90 less than twice the number won by China. So this is the expression to represent how many the US won. And we said the US, we're using X. So that is our first equation. okay, from that sentence in blue. Now they tell us the difference. What does that word mean? Subtract. Okay, so we're going to, whoa, hello. Okay, so we're going to subtract. So the difference between the number won by the US and China was 10. So US minus China, so US medals minus China's medals, they're telling us it's 10. So the US won 10 more than China is another way to say that. Okay. Now, for us to be able to use these to substitute, let me highlight where that came from. That came from this sentence. Okay. Now we're trying to figure out X. What does X equal? So we need to rewrite this in terms of X so that we can substitute, or you can write it in terms of Y. It'll work both ways. I think the easier one is going to be to add the Y to the other side. If I move that Y over, I have X equals. So that says the US had 10 more than China, right? Now I have two equations, both in terms of X. This is what X equals, and this is what X equals. So those must be equal to each other. Okay, I can substitute. I can replace, get a different color here. I can replace this X with this, because that's what X equals. So I'm going to write that 10 plus Y equals 2Y minus 90. Now I have an equation with only one variable. Now I can solve. So sometimes you have to make substitutions. Okay, I had to take this and plug it in there. Okay, I replaced that X right there. And now I only have Y's to deal with. So I'm going to move my Y's to one side. I like to move the smaller variable so that I'm left with positive values. So 2Y minus 1Y is just 1Y. And then I have to move the constant. So Y is 100. Was Y China or US? Go back up here, look where I labeled. What did I label? China was the Y. So have we answered the question yet? The question is, how many did the US win? Well, China won 100. And right here, we just said X is 10 more than China. So I'm going to plug that 100 in. So I'm replacing that Y with 100 to get X. So now X is 110. So the US won 110 medals. I know those get a little wordy and complicated. Okay, you can always, those of you who need to, we can use Translate, Google Translate. We can put those in, or if you have another translating app, you can. Because the lengthier the wording, I know the more complicated it gets. But we need to make sure we know the mathematical terms as well. We have to know what average means. We have to know difference, sum, less than, twice. Okay, make sure you have those from our notes yesterday. We made that nice pretty table where all those words fell. Okay, so when you see those words, you know which operation to do. So if you need to have out yesterday's notes as well as today's, you can get those out. Well, they should all be together. They're in your packet. So you can flip back to yesterday's notes if you need to. Okay, and I'm going to pass out our practice. The practice is going to be only I'm going to erase this one, actually. We're not going to, well, no, I'm not. We're going to do 6 of the 10 problems on here. So I'm going to pass it out, and then y'all make sure you circle the right problems. So on the front, you're only doing 2, 3, and 6. So make sure when you get your papers, as soon as you get your papers, start circling the ones you're supposed to do, the ones to practice. You can have your notes out. You can practice, talk and speak with your neighbors, talk to each other, help each other. Okay, ask me questions if looking at your notes and asking each other is not helping you figure it out. Y'all ask me. Okay, you can skip around if you need to. So 2, 3, and 6. Make sure you've got 2, 3, and 6 circled on the front. 2, 3, and 6. And then flip to the back. We're going to do 7, 8, 9. 7, 8, 9. So we're doing 6 out of the 10. 7, 8, and 9. Again, you can have the notes from today. Look at that table in the notes from yesterday to help you with some of those terms and expressions and what that means, if you should be adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. Okay, you can talk to each other, work with each other, and ask me questions. Okay,